Ladies and gentlemen, our next pairing here at the ACHL digital event, a couple of enablers, as I've given them the title. So I hope you're going to enjoy these two gentlemen. Firstly, we've got David Reed, who's General Manager of Resonate MP4 and the product XOPS. And we've also got Yuval Baruch, CEO, Hermes Logistic Technology. So welcome, gentlemen. Great to have you on board.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Lovely, David. Thank you. Now, gents, just to get things going, and for anybody who's listening, both David and Yuval have got a couple of slides that we're going to go through shortly. But just to start with, from your personal positions and positions within your organizations, what has been the biggest impacts and learnings that have come from this terrible last 3-4 weeks with this bloody crisis? So, David, over to you first.
I wish it was 3 to 4 weeks. I think it's 3 to 4 months.
Months. There you go. Well, thank you for that.
We've learned a lot. I think the biggest thing they've learned is business as usual. I know there's been a lot of downturn in activity, but actually our clients have sort of said, we need to carry on. We need to keep the systems that we've got going, and we need to improve them for the future when we restart. So, keeping the ground handling and the airport community alive and running despite lower capacities has been an important part of what we do. Our information is all real time. So even though it's quieter, we've had to keep all our systems up and running. And it just hasn't really changed too much from that perspective.
And it's interesting what you said there, David, about the fact that people are saying that they need to rely on the systems and they need to see some improvements, updates, etc. So people are focusing on the digitization element now and realizing how important it is.
Absolutely. And I think the critical thing is data. They've all our customers, clients have said to us, we need to improve and we need to make decisions based on data. So tell us, how are our GSE working? How many have we got? How efficient are they? Where can we cut corners? Where can we make improvements? So actually, it's been a very interesting time for us, whereas before maybe some of these systems run in the background and are incident-driven or reactive mode, they've now become a little bit more proactive. And some people have had more time to look at how can we make things better using the information we've got. So it's been an important period for us.
Yeah, and the forecasting and the planning, especially with impacts on people that can't be legislated, whether or not they go into quarantine or anything like that.
Yeah, knowing exactly how to run your operation within the constraints, less equipment available, less people available, it's a much leaner operation, even if the equipment is going to come back into use in the future. So yes, it's been a critical part of the operation.
Okay, good. And I know there's a couple of slides that we'll talk about further on that. And over to you, Yuval. What have been the biggest learnings or the biggest issues that have affected you, quite rightly so, over the last 3, 4 or 5 months, not weeks?
Yeah. Well, we have a situation where our system sits at the heart of the operation, and in a way, our customers needed to adjust really quickly to the situation where they had all of a sudden less people, sometimes more cargo. And that required us to provide really an elevated level of support. So we needed to be there for them right away from the get-go. The other thing is, people started to work from home. Yeah. And we needed to make sure that we continue to deliver and continue to support them as everybody is working from home. So I think the idea of, let's say, everything available through the cloud so everybody can access everything, and the requirement for moving our customers to really SaaS deployment models, those were the things that we learned are really important.
Okay, very good. And again, Yuval, the fact that it's on behalf of organizations and the need now and the interaction and the openness and the sort of plug and play or bolt on capability of all systems, that surely now is coming to the fore.
Definitely. I think you learned that organizations, I'll build on something David said, they really need the information available. They really need the ability to have new people, start doing the work as efficiently as others. So systems need to have really, really good UI, and they need to be able to adopt whatever element of functionality they need to use really, really quickly. And that does require an ecosystem of products where products are segmented and it's easy to deploy, as you said, plug and play.
Okay. Now, something that's always concerned me with IT systems that come in is you always end up with some super users within an organization who become mini or new experts, and they then tend to be doing all the communication between the organizations that are implementing their own platforms. Now, those super users sometimes then start to alienate themselves from the practical feet on the ground. Are you guys respectfully doing things differently now to make sure that it's the practical, the immediacy and the impact that's witnessed by the company and the users, especially because of the influence and the negative impacts of some of the schedule adjustments, people having to be quarantined, reducing staff levels, and then urgent reboots? So, David?
So the super users definitely play a key role. Super users in our world are responsible for the day-to-day administration of the system and making sure that the database is accurate and up to date effectively. But the actual users on the ground really use it as part of their day activity. So if they want to optimize their day's schedule on their own, they can find out what tasks are scheduled for them in advance. They can find out where their equipment is that they need to operate. They can find out what condition it is in advance of them using it. So they can be very much self-help. So although they won't necessarily have the same administration rights into the system, they have full viewing rights. So anyone who wants to see what their day ahead is and how to plan it better, how to improve it, can do it. And I think with downtime and people having more time to do other things that they might not otherwise do in a very busy schedule, I think it's really given a practical level to the users on the ground as to how they can actually improve what they do every day, rather than rushing around from job to job when they're maxed out. They've actually got time to look at the system and say, okay, these are things that I didn't really focus on before. I can now look at myself. So I don't think anything has changed that has caused any kind of alienation. If anything, I think the users have looked deeper into the system because they have real-time access through mobiles or through their laptops, whether they're at home or they're at work. So, as Yuval mentioned, real-time access on a global basis is a fundamental part of this. So it's really helped them to be more practical in terms of what they can do every day to improve what they do.
Yeah, and as far as making people familiar and constantly training and giving them an update, do you use like real-time video explanations of what they can and can't do? Because sometimes when there's instructions or there's been given a one-off sort of like training exercise to a group of people, it doesn't slot in the first time for many, and they tend to ask their colleagues, can you show me this, can you do me this? And there's a lot of repetition and a lot of fear because people don't want to admit that they don't know how to use a system or make the best use of it. So now that people have been at home more, and now that there's a little bit more focus on Zoom and other platforms, has that transferred across to some real sort of video explanations of what you can do, what you should do, and explaining to people why it helps them so much?
Yeah, for sure. So certainly in our world, users who use the system a lot are clearly the most comfortable and most confident. Anyone who doesn't use it, you're right, becomes out of date very quickly. The days of instruction manuals are gone, if not very limited. So everything has to be dynamic and available in video formats. We're actually doing a lot of real-time demos now using our own people. So drivers, in terms of using their vehicles, how to get the best out of the system, how to use it best. We do just real-time videos, and we post those, and they get to view those, and they see that in 5 seconds and think, I get it, this is how I use the system better, as opposed to having a refresher training course that takes them off their job and they have to sit in a classroom. So yeah, absolutely, all those tools are a vital part of keeping that UI, as Yuval said, live and interesting for the end users.
Okay, very, very good. And now, Yuval, over to yourself.
what I believe needs to happen and what we're doing. One is, I think, and again, I'll use a word that is not really a word in the English language, and Uberification. Okay, we believe that when you install the Uber app, you don't need anybody to teach you how to use that. And the view that we have taken for all the apps that and all the modules that we have recently developed is that they need to be, intuitive. You don't need a lot of training to do your work and to work with the app. So one way would be through UI, UX. You make sure that a user is guided through the app and intuitively would know how to use it. The other thing is, yes, a lot of remote training. We are making some digital tools available, but we have found ourselves doing a lot of remote training and developing remote training courses for a lot of different trainers. What is happening now is that request is coming from our customers because, again, they don't want that single point of failure. They don't want that super user and they're the only ones that know how to do and what to do and so on. And therefore, the ability to train online actually increases the number of people that you can train and increases the level of knowledge and capability of everybody within our customers to use the systems. So one is simplifying everything so it's easy to use, and the other is increase the level of training through remote tools.
Okay, very, very good. And can I just come back again now to you, David? I introduced you both as enablers. Okay, in a very short overview, what would you say are the USPs or the benefits that would term you as an enabler within the industry?
So I think our biggest enabler from an XOPS solution perspective is the real-time availability of critical information that allows the ground handling community to make the right decisions. And having real-time access to that data and having the confidence that that data is, as nearest to 100% accuracy as it can possibly be. So fundamentally, at the core of our software application is a telematics module, but there are telematics modules and telematics modules. So the key is the accuracy that allows equipment to be visualized in real time, very precisely in terms of its position on the airport and where it is in any one task relative to an aircraft, whether it's unloading an aircraft or loading an aircraft, and then being able to take that information and run an automatic schedule, which gives you the ability to say that you're going to meet an SLA. And I think those are the USPs, because at the end of the day, bad data leads to bad decisions. So we're confident with the XOPS solution that you're getting best-in-class data based on the technical equipment that we've put in the ground handling equipment. And from a software perspective, we know that schedule that we help you to run will achieve the SLAs for your customers, whether it's cargo, whether it's catering, whether it's fueling. And those are the two USB. It's the combination of the physical telematics and the information that brings, and the unique software and the algorithms that allow a ground handler to automate effectively its schedule to meet an SLA based on certain rules and equipment and capacity that they have.
Okay, very, very good. And one of the things that I just made a note of there is when it gives an indication of where the equipment is, etc. Does it take into account how much use it's had? So it builds up a preventive maintenance, so it shares the usage out over all the equipment that's in stock?
Absolutely. To each ground handler or each business, there is unique triggers that make that business successful or failure. So in the case of, for example, electric vehicles, you need to know that there's enough battery power in that vehicle to complete the task. You need to know if there's enough fuel if it's a conventional fuel vehicle. So yes, the capacity of that vehicle, but also maintenance-wise, we allow proactive, preventative maintenance to take place. So we can see if things are going wrong in the engine before they go wrong. And if it's coming up to its maintenance schedule, we can take it out of service beforehand rather than wait till it's gone past. So there are a range of parameters that we can monitor and track. But yes, certainly what you just mentioned is true.
Okay, very, very good. And Yuval, as an enabler, there's a title for you.
Well, I would say that whatever David said, that they're enabling outside of the terminal, we're enabling within the terminal. So for us, I believe the most important thing is to enable our customers to really monitor their service, manage their service in real time, and actually prevent SLA failure. So in the same way that David mentioned, enabling their customers to meet their SLAs and provide the proper level of service that they aim for, that's what the Hermes application would help the ground handler or the airline do within the terminal.
Okay. Right. In the background now, please, Salem, can you bring up David's presentation so that we get ourselves ready? And whilst you're getting that up, as soon as you've got it up, Salem, please feel free to put it on. That's it. Let's go. So, David, if you can just talk us through this, please.
So I'm going to do this, I hope, relatively quickly, but tell me if anything that I'm saying doesn't come across clearly enough, but I don't want to dwell on anything for too long. So the company is Resonate MP4. Its headquarters in Paris, in France, and its heritage came out of developing what we've just discussed, essentially, at Charles de Gaulle Airport in conjunction with Air France. So much of the community at Charles de Gaulle that supports Air France, whether it's catering, whether it's fueling, whether it's passenger busing, whether it's cargo, is all driven by the XOPS platform. So we've been around for a bit now. We've had about 10 years of experience delivering this XOPS solution. XOPS stands for multiple operations on screen. And we've got some 75 customers around the world, about 3,000 to 5,000 pieces of ground handling equipment that is monitored and managed by our system. And essentially, it's a combination of hardware and software. So critical is the hardware that we put into a GSE to monitor and track what it's doing. And that's taken, 10 years and 3 generations of product to get it to the point that it is at today. And a very clever set of software that, again, has been built out of experience in the industry. So our CEO comes from the cargo and airport community from Air France. So he has that business knowledge. And around his team, he's built the software that allows airport businesses to be run. So we have what we call the fleet management level, which allows the tracking and tracing of the ground handling equipment. We have the operational management system level, which is the green level in the chart that you're looking at. And that layers, if you like, onto the FMS, the application specifics, whether you're a catering company or whether you're a cargo company, or we talked about pooling, for example.
Yep.
And then the last thing is the data management side, which is the fusion of all the data from various third parties. So if you take the Air France community in Charles de Gaulle, almost all of the stakeholders have visibility to all or some of the data that is housed on our systems, so that they can look at it from their own perspective and see whether their suppliers are meeting their performance requirements and deliverables. So that's fundamentally what we are. We're an integrated software and hardware platform that allows real-time data to be viewed and managed.
Okay.
So,
David, can I ask you, if you were an airport now and you wanted to combine all of your tenants' capabilities and have a more efficient overview and more of an influence, do you think there's scope there now for airports to start looking at having a centralized GSE and NME set of equipment, much like on the pallets and the containers for the pooling system? Do you think that makes sense now, with everybody having to be careful with assets, investment and cash flow?
I think it makes absolute sense. I mean, I think you need to separate the management of data and potentially, if you like, the word politics that might come around that with the actual physicality of being able to deliver that goal. And so today we have real life examples of where equipment is pooled and shared very successfully. So multiple ground handlers share the same equipment on every stand, and they know before their flight is arriving that the equipment is there. When they go use it, it's monitored and it's billed And when it's returned to the stand for the next person to use, we know what condition it is in. And that works very successfully. And we can do that from both an electric perspective and a traditional perspective. And we can do it for non-motorized as well. So absolutely, the time is right for airports to look at the economic model and say, is this going to bring benefit to the community if we can reduce the number of assets on the airport? When I say assets, I mean the ground handling equipment. And with that, reducing the cost to the overall airport community. And can we increase safety, for example, by reducing the number of assets on the airport and manage the journeys that those assets make? I think, I'm not an expert in ground handling, but almost any ground handler will tell you the more journeys you make, the more likely it is that you're going to have an accident and therefore cost and damage. So anything that reduces journey time and the amount of assets on the airport, I think is. So yes, I do believe the time has come where these shared asset systems can be successfully administered by tools such as XOPS.
Okay, and what it could also do there is, and you mentioned the word politics, whereby parties have tried to share between themselves, you get a little bit of, well, we want it now, or it's not available. So if it was done neutrally, it would be done almost like a mathematical simulation that would just say, no, these are the equipment that's assigned for you, etc. That's what you do, and then you have to fill out certain criteria when it gets logged back in. So it would take away all of that.
Yes, I mean, this is the great thing about digital process. Once the data is there in the system, you can't argue with it. So we can see when a driver has accessed it by his own identity. We can see when the equipment is turned on or off. We can see where it's moved. We can see whether it's had an accident. We can even integrate with CCTV if that's required as well. So yeah, it takes away the ambiguity or the potential for misinformation or errors. And it can be housed as data is today in a protected, secure environment with access control to only people who are allowed to access. And we can create different levels, and you can have everybody see everything, or some people only see part of it. So it takes collaboration between all the stakeholders. You need to get the ground handlers, the airliners, and the airport authorities into one room and have that discussion. But the output is deliverable today.
Yeah. My thought is that airports are going to get a different opportunity now to take more responsibility and oversight of their own ecosystem and the community. So I'm pretty sure that will start to take effect. But that's just my opinion. So next slide, David.
Really, just a quick word on our customers. I won't read them out. You can see them. They're well-known brands. There are more. And, we cover the spectrum of airports, airlines, ground handlers, and companies who support those organizations. As I said, it's a cloud-based system. Yeah. It's designed to give an end-to-end solution. So we have engineers on the ground who do the work, and we have software support once the system is up and running. And the goal is to be more efficient through using XOPS. So whether it's CapEx or OpEx, there's savings to be made. And as I said, the big data is there for people to use, and you can use a small fraction of it, or you can use everything that's there. Once it's there, it's stored forever, and there's the ability to use it in a real-time environment, or there's an ability to go back and look at it historically. And one of the interesting things, picking up on Yuval's comments about SLAs, is no longer do we need to dispute an SLA about where we earned an aircraft on time with a particular vehicle and how long we were there for. Was the piece of paper signed? Was it lost? It's there for all to see. You can record quite easily whether cargo was offloaded at a particular time and delivered back to the terminal building, and that can be introduced into any kind of SLA contract discussions in support of showing a customer that you've delivered to your requirements.
Yeah, and also the fact that the pay as you grow allows people then to just get involved as it develops or as they find a need.
I think as we've grown and matured, we feel confident now. We don't have to worry about the sort of big setup process. We're pretty confident. We understand most of our customers' needs, airport by airport. So we can say, that most of the development work has been done. Now we just need to switch it on for you. There's a little bit of customization around any piece of software to tweak it to what a customer wants. But fundamentally, it's a simple licensing model. You pay for every piece of GSE you have, rather than paying for the infrastructure that sits behind that. And if you increase your GSE fleet or you reduce your GSE fleet, your payments go down accordingly. So it's very much flexible. And if you have a lean period, like I guess people are having in COVID at the moment, there's an ability to temporarily take some of the cost out of running that business. So it's an important part of our selling proposition, to be obviously efficient, cost effective, but also scalable.
Yeah, no, very good. And the mention of the SLA, so then it also allows collectively people to start evaluating the trends and not every single little incident that goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can go back and dwell over the single incident if you want to, but the most important thing is to be able to say month to month, can you show your airline customer that you're meeting the targets? And equally, if there's a trend going in a negative direction, what steps can you take to change that? So yes, a very important part of the process is giving your customers the confidence that you're delivering and the trends in the right direction.
Okay, very good. Next slide, please, Salem.
So the last two slides, I'm just moving from the general to the specific because I thought it would be rather interesting. This is a very unique case. It's all around how we at XOPS can help deliver certification around secure cargo. So these are a set of standards, ACC3, around IATA and how to make sure that a cargo handler is certified for certain types of cargo. So in this case, we're talking about fresh food, perishables, pharmaceuticals, and live animals. And just by using the XOPS solution together with a little bit of extra technology, in this case a temperature probe placed in the cabins of the vehicle, we can allow a cargo handler to achieve these certifications, so that the end user or the regulator, depending on which is relevant, knows that cargo has been transported between the plane and the terminal building where we release it to Hermes, for example. It's released, and at all times during its journey, it has been within a particular temperature zone. So if you go to the next slide, Salam, thank you. You'll see this is the practical world as opposed to the theory. We've got vans where pets are being carried at Heathrow, and we've got expensive thermocoolers in Hong Kong where fresh produce is being carried. And by engineering the vehicle or the cargo container in this particular case with a temperature probe and then wiring that into the XOPS solution, we can give, as you see in the graph above, a real-time date, time-stamped audit trail of the temperature in those critical cargo areas. So if any point in time, the temperature is not where it should be, that can be tracked. Potentially it can be changed by the driver. The driver can get an alert, say, temperature is not working in your van, do something about it. And obviously we distinguish between the cabin and where the cargo is. So quite often these things can cause confusion. And this is all around making sure that the cargo arrives in exactly the right shape it should be. And if it's live produce, obviously sitting around on the air side for an hour whilst the plane is delayed, could destroy a cargo, depending on what it is. So these are practical ways where collaborating with obviously the regulators in this case and the technology providers, we're able to give a solution to the cargo handlers that allow them to get the certification that they need. And as we move forward, I think some of these standards and regulations are what the airports need to not only refer to but then enforce, so that there's a level playing field for everyone. And we know that the cargo handlers who do follow these best practices get the rewards for their services.
Correct, and recognition. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And can I ask you one last question? With the pending pressures and challenges that are going to come now with the vaccine introduction and distribution, is there the possibility for all facilities and transport in between facilities and equipment, i.e. aircraft, is there the capability to have that forecast and control over the use of those facilities to give a real clear picture of what the capability of an airport and its tenant cool chain facilities are able to deliver?
So I think we're as Yuval mentioned before, we're a relatively unique or single part of the chain. So I think what we can confidently say is that with our application and with the technology, we can be comfortable and confident in saying that that cargo, in this case a vaccine, is being moved from the aircraft within this vehicle or this facility in whatever regulation and rules are designed. I mean, clearly, once it goes beyond that, then somebody else will take over that bit. But I think the dark, people often refer to the dark side is what goes on under the wing. In the old days, it was very much, a piece of cargo comes off a plane, could sit around, no one would necessarily know about it. But I think we can track and trace things now, and with the digital capability, we can prove it. And with some of the technology that's now available, we can actually ensure that standard, if you like, can be practically rolled out, certainly on an airport basis and on a global basis too. If all these airports collaborate to follow the same standards, there's no reason why they can't say, well, this vaccine has gone through 3 airports, but it's actually attained a certain level of, in this case, temperature. But it could be something else that we're measuring as well.
Exactly. So the collaboration of the community. Yeah. David, listen, thank you very much. Salem, if you can pull up Yuval's slides now, that'd be great. There we go. So Yuval, if you can take us through the first one.
I think generally, I don't know how much people know about Hermes, so I thought, a little intro about who we are and what we do. In essence, Hermes was created. Chris, I know you know a lot about Hermes, so this is not meant for you. But around 2002 it was created by cargo people, for cargo people really. The understanding that in order to create the right tools for the cargo people to use, you need to really understand, every single process really, really well and come out with best practice that is translated then into code and created the system. That's where we originated. So since 2002 until about, I would say 2018, our focus was the CMS, really the cargo management system. And the essence was, how do we help our customers make sure, they are able to monitor the service, maintain SLAs, really do the work that at the end of the day will keep them, the largest bottom line they can, because we all know that the ground handlers are the ones that are really getting a very, very small share of the, of the whole supply chain in terms of, revenue and profits. They're really all the time squeezed. So monitoring everything in real time was really, really important, and make sure they don't fail SLAs is important. As we grew, we are now available in generally 80 airports around the world. The Hermes system runs about 8 million tons with the various customers. And again, like David, there's no need to go into the customers, but if you go through, the arrow of growth, you will see some quite important names, and you were part of those, and we collaborated at certain times with that. Around 2017, 2018, we understood that we need to change something. We need to do something differently and then move on. And that moving on was really the understanding that we need to start to migrate whatever we do into the cloud. We need to do things differently and offer them differently to our customers. And therefore came about the strategy of developing Hermes NG. So if you can jump to the next slide, that'll help. Yes. So in essence, let's say the roadmap, the strategy was move Hermes to the cloud. That was the first thing in order to enable everything that will come afterwards. But then the understanding that as a CMS, as a tool that stands on its own, doesn't communicate with its ecosystem and so on, that's not enough. That doesn't give enough value to our customers. And we then thought, how about we evolve and develop an ecosystem? Now that ecosystem is basically structured of 3 elements. One is the analytics side, and for that we'll go into a little bit more detail, because that is actually a very important part of what the future needs to be for our customers, in terms of us enabling them, right? As you determined us as enablers, we need to enable them to make better decisions, to run their business better, and therefore the analytics is an important part of that. The other thing is we're now all talking about communities and cargo community systems and you know, the airport's taking a bigger role and everybody cooperating and sharing data. To do that, we really needed to open the application, APIs. That's the way, and we thought we open Hermes to any application to communicate with us, for any customer to do whatever they want without really the need to have complicated elements of going into the database. And the third was really the self-serve apps. We talked about it. We need simple apps. As we said, the oblivification of, you know, of services, and really create simple apps that are easy, plug and play. You install them, you work with them, and so on. On the right, you can see really the element of how we structured our roadmap, where in the core of things, you see the Hermes application, the CMS with all the great functionality that it has. Yeah. But around it, there is an ecosystem of services and products that can now enable our customers to actually utilize Hermes and the data and the huge amount of data that is created by Hermes to their benefits. Next slide, please. So in brief, we believe that everything around Hermes NG is really, you know, the digital through and through. We think that there is lots of data, but that data is a mystery. In the past, you needed somebody, you know, to have very, very sophisticated BI tools, and you needed to know people, to have people that know the structure of your database to go and get this piece of data or that piece of data. That is no longer necessary.
Good.
What we've done with Hermes NG is really translated everything that the system does into events. And an event, let's say reception, right? A truck comes to reception. That's an event, and that needs to be logged as an event rather than an element of data that nobody understands. And that event then can be sent to a track and trace system, similar to what David was referring to. People want to know that the truck had arrived to the reception, and therefore the event needs to be clear. So what we've developed within the Hermes system is a relay that really, you know, shoots events constantly out of the system, and that populates a huge data lake of events that now our customers can use, their customers can use, other applications can use, and in essence, other data translated into events can now flow back into the Hermes system. So as you can see, this is aimed in order to share, to publish. You know, we want to make sure that that data is no longer too complicated to use, too complicated to understand. And I think if data lakes are used properly, then our customers are a lot wiser in simple manners to be able to really take decisions and make sure, by the way, they manage also their day-to-day. And those you know, famous SLAs, they meet them properly or even ahead of time.
Yeah. Can I ask you something, Yuval? Sure. Right. All of us have been around a while. And if you look at every time you go into a new project with a new carrier or a new customer or GHA, you've got a slight different approach to the process and what needs to be managed and what needs to be recorded. Okay. So now what you're saying here with these standard events, do you not think it's possible, and David, you can jump in as well if you want, but do you not think it's possible that we could now have an agreed set of critical process performance steps that would be logged, recorded, and linked to a nice, simple standard SLA? And that was the way everybody should do this work, whether you're in the Far East, the Near East, Africa, the States, or Europe, so that it was done nice and simple. And then everybody else who had an associated program could fit in as to where they were influencing that particular set process. Do you not think that we should be aiming for that now?
I'm smiling because when we created the Hermes system, the idea behind that was really that nobody needs to reinvent the wheel, right? We know what best practice processes are. And if those are designed as part of the system, in a way, all of the customers, just by sheer deploying the system and using it correctly, could take benefit of that. Now, you rightfully, indicated that customers had their own ideas about how to do things, how to run things. And we saw, for one, implementations being treated differently. And then after that, we saw customers taking the information and using it differently and developing processes on their own.
Yep.
I have to say that in the last year or so, I am hearing more and more customers come to us and tell us, listen, we've moved away from the original processes. We moved away from how the system drives our processes in the best way. And we now want to take a neat look at the system, do a health check, and actually move back to the best practice processes that are part of what is already available in the system. That, in a way, will kind of create what you're suggesting, which means different operations in different locations, really using the same processes to make sure there is alignment throughout the supply chain. So
Okay.
I do think that's possible. It was designed. And to be honest, I am seeing now sort of a little bit of an openness and willingness to go that way.
Good. And the reason I'm saying it, Yuval, is because I did a couple of like mystery shopper exercises for a couple of organizations. And when people were turning up, drivers, and they've got smalls, and they're being told, sorry, mate, the system says you've got to be in the queue just like everybody else. Then you've got somebody else who's coming late, somebody else who should be on time for a slot getting blocked out. It's always blaming it on the system. Now, surely something there has got to start to be directing and giving information, correct information to people who can make the decisions to adjust that in real time as well. Because there's a tendency now to start blaming the system or blaming the way the system is guiding people to do things. So from both of your perspectives, is there a way now of making it simpler and also giving feedback to the people on the ground as to why it's important they do certain things for the customer's experience, not to make their lives easier or, I'm sorry, guys, got to go for a break now. All those things that frustrate customers. Where's that transparency coming from? Because the amount of time that goes into creating reports and disciplinary letters and communication through SLAs is a waste of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right. Look, I think the availability of the events we talked about now enables e-reception or track and trace or any type of digital data sharing that would enable systems to communicate safely, without creating problems of complicated interfaces. And that availability of data should help in actually, running slots better. Yeah. Instead of that driving coming in and being told, no, need to go to the end of the line, he would actually know in advance what would be the best time for him to come in. And if AI was used properly, then his bosses, would even get benefit from booking a slot in downtime. And so what I'm saying is it's all about making that data available to the ecosystem. So true collaboration between the different elements of the supply chain could be created. That's the only, that's the main reason we're focusing on the events, the data lakes, so the information is available to everybody from us, and we hope others will do the same.
Yeah. And David, you've been sitting there patiently. One of the things that has always concerned me is we're very good at telling people what to do, where to do it, when to do it, and how to do it, but we don't explain the whys enough to people so that once they learn and they understand and appreciate how important it is for their step in that or their link in that chain, it makes things a lot more effective.
Yeah, and I think that last 5-minute conversation raised quite a few interesting points, and maybe in the interest of time, I can just jump to a couple of elements of it. So I think having the data available in real time is critical. In the past, I think people relied on, as you said, reports that came a month after the event and arguably could be debated, and one person's view was another person's view. And I think if I can distill it down into a practical example, and it's only one area, but I think it applies to many other areas. One of our clients uses the system. In this case, it's all around speeding at an airport, and they use the system on a real-time basis. So they don't call a driver in at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month and clobber him or her and say, you've broken lots of rules, you're now on performance watch, or whatever the expression is. They actually deliver a real-time message within seconds of a speeding event to the driver, if that's appropriate, or to his manager. And they encourage the driver, by doing it on a real-time basis, to see the error of their ways, and they stop doing it. And so in this particular case, by simply having a real-time perspective on the data across a very large airport, a very large number of vehicles, a very large number of drivers, that institution managed to effectively reduce speeding events to effectively nothing, because there was a real-time interaction, and they engaged with the drivers and said, you mustn't do this. And there was no room for the driver to say, well, it wasn't me, or it wasn't, that speed. Exactly. It's actually there. And initially people thought, well, this is going to get, the drivers of these vehicles upset. But actually they took it very positively and said, well, okay, you're telling me, you've caught me, I'll stop doing it. And so the game is kind of over. And I think we can apply that way beyond just speeding, and we can look at best practices around, how vehicles are driven at the airport, for sure, but also how cargo is handled, for example, and introduce things that improve safety rather than just monetary values as well. So I think the whole element of, as Yuval said, managing the event and thinking about how to use the data in an imaginative way allows people to be far more practical in helping effectively the feet on the ground, the guys and the ladies who have to do the jobs.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, when you look at how much time it's taken Yuval for everybody to start opening up to Cargo IQ and the standard messaging and the ways of offsetting and reductions, and it's wrong. So I think once the capability is there now, I think also it needs to be understood that sometimes you have to say, this must be done, this must be followed, and this is how it will be done, this is why it's necessary, and you need to do it. Because too much options and too many choices, I don't think is great at this moment in time, with so many issues affected by the crisis and development. So, gentlemen, we're coming to near the end of the session. Now, what I'd like to do, and I'd like to start with you, Yuval, please, is what 3 things would you, as an individual heading your organisation or your organisation, be willing to commit and collaborate on to assist the enabler title of your function for the supply chain and the community?
I would say 3 things would be, probably the first one would be innovation. Yeah. I mean, we would need, as technology companies, I think we have a role in making sure, there is constant innovation introduced into our systems that then enables, our customers to do more. So innovation is one. The next would probably be what you suggested in terms of the plug and play. Yeah. So making sure that the deployment of systems constantly becomes simpler. I believe that would help then customers and generally the industry to quicker adoption, which I think is really important. And the last one is probably one of the more important ones is really the share of information. So pushing towards a clear events, logging, and exchange between the different systems. So basically the information is available to all. I would say these are the 3 things. If we would need to collaborate with others on some, those would be the 3.
Okay, lovely. And the same to you, David?
Yeah, I'm going to start with actually the same one that Yuval ended on. So I think the information and the analysis of it from a best practice perspective, I think, we've got a lot of data now. We can use the principles of that data to good help in terms of how the airports can change and how the airport communities can adopt best practices. And from that, I think we can then develop applications that are, for example, like the temperature probe and the safe movement of fresh and valuable cargo. These are relatively simple things to achieve that can make a big difference to a particular business. It's the combination of the application, the software and the hardware to deliver a solution. And I think we'd be willing to commit to work with customers to say, what is the thing that you need to do better, and how can our technology and our software make that happen? And I think the third one that moves on logically from those through is we're very active engaging in trials with our customers. So we find our biggest successes come from customers who trial a particular piece of technology and application, and they get comfortable with it, and as a result of that they see its power, and then they roll it out across their organization. So I think for us it's information, it's application, and then it's trialing before you then roll it out across your business. And I think that's a key to success for both of us.
Okay, very, very good. And keeping with you, David, what three things would you now like or wish for the community to do to help you continue to enable the supply chain?
So I think I'm going to focus on three things. There are many. I think the first one is this collaborative environment. Every airport is different around the world, and some clearly have issues that others don't have. So it's not easy to say, vanilla, one flavor suits all. But I think the airport authority, both from an economic perspective that's been driven out of the current environment, but also from a safety perspective, needs to encourage people to collaborate, share information, achieve standards, create a level playing field. All these things are very important and can't be done overnight, but if the airport sets the tone, airport authority sets the tone, then generally speaking, others will begin to follow. I think the second one I'm going to focus on is pooling, partly because you raised it, and partly because I think we feel it's a way that economic gain and productivity can come from the airport, and the technology is now here to enable the pooling to be operated on a successful basis. So I think it takes the airport authority to, again, bring the community together, discuss the pros and cons and the benefits, and iron out these issues about, how much people have invested and how much they may or may not lose as a result of going through a pooling operation, and how they can compete going forward. But I think pooling is a big player for us going forward. And the third one is a bit specific, but I think will enable another things, is the electrification of the infrastructure at the airport. So a lot of our customers are very willing to go clean and use electric vehicles, but they don't necessarily have the ability across the airports to charge them in the way they do. So yeah. I think, again, it requires the airport authority to take the lead here and be very aggressive in electrifying the airport infrastructure to allow our ground handling customers to move away from the older and the less environmentally friendly GSE.
No, exactly. Okay, very, very good. And Yuval, the three things that you'd like or wish for?
Well, one thing, you'll excuse the slightly bold language, but I would like the customers and the industry generally to grow up here, which means adoption of technology needs to be with a lot more courage. I think there is big fear of I think there is big fear of innovation. There's big fear of David, you mentioned it, trialing. Just take innovation, play with that, try that. You'll only benefit in the short and longer term. So, as I said, the industry needs to be more aggressive in adopting new technologies. The second thing is really, and we're seeing that slightly now, COVID is actually contributing to that, is the understanding that you need to invest in your technology. Too many organizations, are leaving legacy systems and old applications there just because it's too complicated to change. They don't invest, that you need to invest in your technology. If you want to stay, if the industry needs to move forward, they need to invest in technology. And the last is actually something, David, that you mentioned, and I think we talk a lot about collaboration. We don't really collaborate. So I can share with you that as part of the Engie ecosystem, we have already reached out to a number of other software companies that have softwares that are complementary to Hermes, or even to some extent, we have competing elements, and we're talking about how do we create an ecosystem that is better for a customer, work together, and so on. So collaboration, I think, move it from talking about it to actually doing it.
Yep. Put it into practice and not just keep it in principle. So, gentlemen, I think we've come back to the to the titles or the objectives or the principles of the event, which is crisis to care and collaborate and share. So, really appreciate your time. I know you've got both get on to something else. So, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciated, and thanks for the slides as well.
Pleasure. Hope it's useful. Great to see you.
Thanks, Chris. It was great, David. Thank you.